Are these going? Oh. I think, I don't know. I was talking with Michael about this because this is just part of the work, and it's a part of the work that somehow has to become physical. My frustration is that the physical and the reality, how those two things come together and how people are actually moving through space, interacting with something and learning something as you go, is something that's always evolving. What we're doing with the State Archives project is we have everybody who comes to the project automatically gets an interactive CD player that can be programmed. So teachers can talk to students as they're moving through the space. You can choose your level of who you want to guide you through the space. You can take a fast track tour. You can take your own self-guided tour, and as you're moving through the space, infrared sensors pick up where you are and start driving dialogue through your CD player to have you look this way, look at that. You might open drawers. When the drawers open up, that starts triggering an interactive device again. Your CD player goes to a location, sound comes up, maybe there's a backlit transparency that happens next to the document so that there's a relationship between you and the environment working off of the environment and the environment working off of you. So you're really driving the exhibit. So that CD player has probably 2 hours or 2.5 hours worth of programming. So you can be taken through by a curator, you can be taken through by an architect who's already got a program on there. Warren Olney's coming back in and doing a voiceover on a lot of this and talking about his family history and what he knows about California history along with what's already scripted by the curators. So I guess where our work is going is that I'm really wanting to get more and more in touch with the reality of what's going on for the viewer, the reality of what's going on with the material, and how do people relate to it, and how does that perhaps change the environment that we're working in. I don't know. There's another, the larger issues with that too is that you've got a client like the Secretary of State who says, the Secretary of State doesn't really want us to say anything about the California Constitution being both written in Spanish and English during the introductory theater. They don't really want to have multiple points of view and multiple stories about the struggle of what it is to be a Californian today as part of the history of California and what we're doing. They're seeing it more as a kind of a sales item for the state of California, for everybody to be excited about the history of California. We're seeing it as an environment that actually empowers people to get in touch with themselves and they can hear their story inside the space. So I think for you, I guess my message to you, if I had a message, is, as architects and people who are moving out in the field to develop creative product, what's your responsibility in terms of you developing the creative product and what the message is? And how does that get, how do you fight that out? I mean, we talked with them about having Disney come in and be sponsors to the State Museum project. Here Disney is creating this theme park in Southern California. It's all going to be about California history. And they're going to take everything that's in the exhibition, all the issues generated, concepts that are in the exhibit that have original source materials in the archives that could actually be boxed and shipped to different schools so that students could actually look at the different legislation of when someone could finally buy a house, or when, when Japanese internment stopped, or when this happened or that happened. That I think there's a relationship between somehow creating an institution that can connect to education, that can connect to the entertainment. When we were looking at Disney of being able to come in and say, all right, maybe Disney needs to also have original source materials in the theme park. Maybe part of the residual of the theme park ought to be set aside by Disney so that the work within the parks, state parks, and the work in different environments all throughout California, that when you went to those environments that somehow there's an interactive program that starts to happen where those parks become interactive with the curriculum system, or interactive with what's going on with Disney, or interactive with the state of what's going on with the legislation at the moment. So. Well, they're really connected.
Here's me and there's the museum.
Right. We are, but it's again, it's still a relationship between, you know, you opening a book. Let's say that, you know, with the Countrywide Museum, we're talking about having a series of albums or books. Again, or if you open a drawer, that by the time you get to the last page of the book, or as you're turning the book, it's actually activating different audio sequences for you to be witnessing. Or it's you turn the page and it's actually, you know, turning on a light source, you know, letting a quote come up, having some other event happen, you know, where you're actually creating what's going on rather than you just reading and standing, you know, aside from the object. Or you're getting into an immersive environment like the bus, and there's something that's being triggered that way.
Are you going to be able to incorporate the Spanish Constitution at all?
Oh yeah, yeah. We're showing both versions. We're showing all of the documents for that and another separate thing. His issue was whether or not we wanted to show it or have that brought up in the introductory theater. You know, that he just, you know, I mean, he's a Republican. You know, there's a partisan kind of quality in the legislature, as you know. No one really wants to talk about, 187. No one really wants to talk about the 3 strikes. No one, and that's a lot of the content that we have in the exhibit that's accessible.
So it's that current.
Right.
Are you going to have any kind of, I remember when I was a little, we went to some places, centers or whatever, where they have gold painting, all that kind of stuff for like little kids?
Well, there are docents. I mean, there's a whole level of interactivity. I mean, we have the audiovisual programs. You've got the CD programs. You've got all the text. You've got obviously the photographs and objects are another delivery system. You've got the immersive environments as another delivery system. The docent tours are another one. The debates that occur are yet another one, where there are people that are facilitating debates and those kinds of things. There are tours that then emanate from the museum and go out. There are curriculum packets that get designed and developed that get sent out to schools so that they have a kind of understanding of what they're going to be looking at, what some of the legislation is. They come in. The teachers have interactive microphones with those audio cassettes, so each teacher group can actually instruct the students on how to move through the environment and what to look for while they're looking at it, and talk with them back and forth that way. So it's not just going and kind of bumping along and just seeing this or that, although that's very effective. I mean, even with all these devices, whenever I go to a museum, I rarely get the interactive CD programs, I mean, I'm not sure it makes a difference, after doing all of this. I'm not sure any of this works. I mean, there is that notion that no matter what you do, I mean, we could have started the lecture at the back and worked forward. I probably could have started drawing and gone through it, and you'd still get to all of these issues. When you're working on your projects, it's like, do you start with the site plan, or do you start with some room interior concept, that you're thinking about, and let it grow from there? So I think the exhibit environment is a little bit like that, where everybody's moving around and kind of ricocheting back and forth, and you slowly assimilate what the content is.
Do you proceed from that?
I'm sorry?
I mean, do you ever say, okay, that's the organizing principle?
Oh yeah, yeah. I think Magic World is a lot that, where you're really dumped into a fairly chaotic environment that you then start to unwrap and unwind and explore and piece together. It's more of a game. It's a little hard. It's hard because your clients don't think that way. Your clients are thinking storyline. Your clients are thinking they have something to say. And they're, you have to kind of disassemble it. I think you have to disassemble it and reassemble it. I mean, for the most part, they think there's a beginning, middle, and end to the story. That there's a lot of content that they think that they have to distribute, even though that's not the way people are going to interact with it. And there's the issue of what are real objects and what are props and what are fakes, what are kind of reproductions. There's because I think there's a lot that comes off the actual and real objects that are very powerful and have a lot of things to say.
It's an interesting problem with pathways, really, isn't it?
It is. How do you give people a sense of discovery even though you're controlling them? How do you build that in? How do you build in the concept of choice even though you may or may not have it? Because there's a throughput. You know, I mean, the museum wants to sell a certain number of tickets. They've got to get a certain number of people through on a weekend. You've got to create an environment that moves them in, moves them out. You know, when people come to that, I mean, the difficulty is that you walk into a room and you walk into an environment and it's, what are you going to see first, second, and third? How do you assimilate the information? We could put text in a gigantic way on the wall. Doesn't mean you're going to read it first. And if you do you remember it? And do you take that, the written material with you as you start to look at an object? And how do you link that to the audio mechanism or a video program that you see or a big film projection? How do you get the gestalt of, you know, this argument or the essence of, you know, you've got a choice to make. Are you going to vote for water or are you going to, you know, keep the environment pristine? You know, that's a real grappling kind of choice. So how do we create, you know, I mean, people walk into this cabin. We've created a cabin for that to play out in. You know, but what are people's feelings when they walk into the cabin, you know? Good. We do tests. I mean, we've... It's all self-guided. It's all self-guided. So if they don't want it, they don't use it. I mean, it's just something that's given to them when they come in. And it's their option. So, you know, what happens is that we have numbers and things along objects. So that when you come up to an object, if you're looking at it, if you want to look at the label, if you're more interested, you'll just punch in the number. And when you punch in the numbers, someone's voice will come up and it'll talk about, you know, boy, you know, Betsy collected that, you know, that object when her grandmother came across the border and, you know, she crocheted that. It took her 42 hours to crochet this dress or whatever it is. You know, you get engaged in a level of some other dialogue that allows you to either see something else in the object, come out with a different point of view or not. Or you choose not to do that. You choose to say, no, that's not what I'm interested in. I'm going to go over here and choose some other information. Or I'm going to go... You don't know. The problem is that there's so many different ways of learning. You know, I mean, people are going to be learning kinesthetically or, you know, spatially. They're going to learn mathematically. They're going to read something. They're going to hear something. They're going to do something. They're going to share something with a friend because you're talking back and forth.
Do you have projects where you just say, I'm going to make this look as good as it can look and let the information be marginal to that? Let's say...
Well, you can, but that's like creating an art environment. I mean, I didn't even show you all the art environments we create, which are completely pristine. I mean, they can be gorgeous, you know, and completely, you know, aesthetic. But that's one delivery, and it's fairly esoteric. It's a language system that exists outside of the person walking in. The person has to have the language system built into them already to read the artwork. That's kind of what contemporary art is, you know, or artwork in general. Eurocentric art is art that's been developed and has its language, and you either know the language and are privy to it or you're not. Now, if you're a Latino and you come in and you don't know that language system, or if you're Caucasian and you go look at the Siqueiros mural and it's got a whole set of other kind of iconography built into the mural, you know, at what point, you know, I could look at that mural and I could say, oh, I understand what this is about. For me, this is the meaning of the mural. Now, if Siqueiros told you what he was thinking when he painted the mural, that's a whole other set of issues. You know, so at what point do you share that? Do you need to share it? And if you share it, how do you share it? You know, and when you share it, you give the person the choice to either get it or not get it. And if you do, then you've got to figure out what format you're going to share it in, and create a space for it and a level of importance, and try to figure out if you're going to see it first, second, or third, or try to, you know. And it's very complex. And it's
all of your projects fast track? I mean, do you always feel like you're working in a compressed schedule that's...
Not all of them. The California State Archives project has been anything but that. It's been a 4-year project. The problem with that project, as I see it, is that the team is so huge. We have 15 people on the staff of the archives who are involved. The Secretary of State's changed twice now. 2 new Secretary of States, 2 directors of the museum, the original curator who was out of the Oakland Museum, and other people that we hired are no longer with the project. We have new curators on board who are working with the project. We have the partnership between Hodgins and Fung and ourselves in designing the project. So we have two different kind of communication systems there in terms of what they want to do in terms of an expedient environment, and them thinking that the objects don't really count, and that the environment can be any environment that it wants to. You can just put the objects in, or why can't you go get a set decorator and let's just decorate this like a Disney environment, and that the objects and the real objects aren't sacred, you know. And then you have all of the discussions about how's the education system going to work. We have all those groups that we're creating and working with. We have all the state agencies that we're involved with trying to get objects out of varying state agencies who don't want to give the objects up because they all think they're going to get their own museum and they don't really want to collaborate. We have the archives who thinks that all of these documents and the legislative documents and everything that they're working with are really incredible, and they want all those documents to be on display. And we're saying, look, after you've seen one, that's too many. You know, my God, this is really boring stuff. You know, so then we have the budget, which is a layer and a player. Then we have all the media productions. We have 8 different media production teams who are creating interactive games, creating the CD-ROM players and all of that. And then you have your project managers, and then you have your designers. And so you've got to get all those people around the table and keep a dream kind of alive, or a core concept about what are we really doing here, what are the education goals, what are we really saying, how are we going to say it, what's the impact to the viewer. You've got all these people's points of view about what they think that is, that you've got to filter through, send memos to, you know, take it through the proper steps. So it's tough, you know, and it's, you know, but you've got to grapple with it. You know, I mean, the people from the sports arena brought us in the other day and said, you know, we're going to do this sports arena downtown. What's it going to be? You know, and we've got one group of architects saying, oh, it ought to be like Times Square, it ought to be this, it ought to be that. Someone else that they brought in from Universal Studios says, well, here's how we did City Walk, and here's what's this, you know, here's what's driving that environment, here's what the leasing arrangements are, here's what that is. You know, we've got other people from the Santa Monica 3rd Street Promenade talking about, well, how is all that structured and layered, and, you know. So now they're developing 38 acres in downtown LA and saying, what can it be, you know? And I'm looking at it saying, you know, well, what's not in existence is anything that's real about Los Angeles. Everybody has a perception about LA. Nobody knows where the heck it is. That word starts with an F. No one knows where Los Angeles is, and there's a whole gateway here about LA and an expectation about LA, and how do we do something that's meaningful to the Chinese community, to the Latino community, to the Caucasians, to the Italians, you know. That's the sports arena downtown. You know, that's been in the papers a lot. You know, it's the LA Kings and the Lakers are going to have a new arena downtown. If the city can get beyond this and say, yeah, you know, here's 38 acres, let's do. No, we're just simply talking to them about what are the issues as you're designing that huge environment. And to me, the issues are, how do you create truth in reality? And how do you give people the opportunity for, you know, how can we get Latino street riders and people who are making street machines from bicycles to cars, how can we have those in that environment? How can we have, you know, real kind of Japanese American, Chinese American food, and how can we have real ceremony going on in those environments? How can we bring in all the sports-related kinds of things and have that reality going on? How can we create a layer of things happening in that environment that would be a window into Los Angeles in an honest and real way? Not in a City Walk way, because to me, City Walk is like a ghetto. That's exhibit design taken to the worst extreme. You know, if there's anything hateful about what I do, it's that you have to congeal this thing into a manageable package, and as soon as you edit it, and create a false set of information criteria, you know, yeah, you're disseminating the information, but you're also trapping yourself into a series of commitments that you can't get out of, that didn't evolve naturally over time through some other set of circumstances. So how could we create an environment in LA, in downtown LA, that's a natural series of circumstances that would be real? How do you orchestrate reality and create an architectural environment where real things can occur? Not 3rd Street. I mean, you get onto 3rd Street. I mean, I get claustrophobic. I mean, the people there, you know, you've got this scene, you know, You got all these, young ladies in short skirts, and and you've got the, you've got the jugglers, and you've got these people, and you've got, everybody asking for money, and then you've got all the theaters going on, and then there are restaurants, and it's okay, but it's not everything to everybody.
What is the basis of most of those commercial enterprises? It's not the offering of information or immersion, it's the offering of fantasy.
It's an offering of fantasy.
In something like the Sacramento Museum.
Yeah, but where's the responsibility? Where's the responsibility to create the greater good? The responsibility to me, from the Secretary of State's point of view, to create the greater good is to get the Department of Education, the State Library Association, the Department of Parks and Rec to merge together with the archives and bring together the best objects and the best original source material, get it out to the schools, create an exhibition environment that works off of the California State frameworks for teaching all the history and what the issues are, and empowering people through a computer network and through a series of other means, empowering all those people to use real objects that were generated out of truth and generated out of somebody doing something real to create a law, create a circumstance, ask a question, that kind of thing, and create an environment for that to exist in. So if I'm looking at the sports arena people, then I would say, you can bring in the Nike Superstore, bring in all of these other layers, but at the same time, I think you want to create a place where everybody is empowered. I want to create a place where I can walk up to somebody that I wouldn't normally walk up and interact with them. I really wanted to talk to a low-rider Chicano guy who's wearing a hairnet because he scares the hell out of me. I want that environment where I can walk up and he's happy to talk to me because he's doing something he's proud of, and I'm kind of happy to see it, and that there's a casual situation there. Is there a way we can do that and have the sports arena? Or can you create the sports arena in the Olympics? The Olympics just spent, in Atlanta, they spent $3 billion or whatever they spent, developing all the stadiums, doing all of these environments, doing everything else, and there's no legacy. The Olympics are gone. There's no legacy that goes back to the educational system in the schools. There's no real legacy that the community environment got built up in a better way. There's no real residual that's there. And it seems like in starting to go into the 21st century, that we've got to be partnering in a way where all these things start building. If you looked at the Olympics and said, I want to teach physics from the Olympics and from what we're seeing out of the Olympics, you could look at bodies in motion, bodies moving through mediums, through liquid for swimming, riding on a velodrome and a bicycle, racing along a track, doing rowing out in the water. You could use that as a teaching environment and as a lab to teach physics, to teach history, to teach community development, to teach sportsmanship, to teach, you could teach anything from sports. We went through this on Splash Sports. Sports is that first thing that kids do when they actually start to organize themselves and realize their relationship to other people in the environment. There's competition, but there's happiness, there's the struggle, there's so much that comes out of sports that could be said and saved and preserved and exported from something like the Olympics. So how could we do it with the sports arena? How do you create, a sense of place that has larger programming influences? I'm just talking about larger things that shape design. I'm not,
But the issue is really how you get people to place importance on this event. I think that's the whole issue between information and fantasy, is that commercial enterprises know that people are not really interested in information because they don't really know what it has to do.
No, but people are interested in feeling good and being empowered and being able to share things and being able to form groups and form, those kinds of relationships. And I think what I have a fear of is that what's going on primarily is that corporate America is very good at individualizing everything and creating fantasies and creating kind of very quick, very hyper interactions in the environment, whether it be, with sports-related things, whether it be, that all of that is so hyped that the adrenaline rush is what's kind of being produced, and maybe not a lot of the other kinds of long-term associations that it takes to create, a city and an environment and a...
People get excited because they think they are looking for some event that goes beyond their own lives. That's why the Olympics
But it can just go deeper. It can go deeper is all I'm saying. You know, you can layer it to go deeper. I mean, with the Getty, we've got, here we're doing this, you know, they're spending $3 million to conserve this mural, put up the structures, do all the exhibition work, do all of this stuff. You know, now the merchants on Rivera Street don't want it. They're not sure that they want this. They don't care about the Siqueiros mural. This is a mural that was painted in 1932. It's extremely important, has a lot of historical value, you know. But what's in existence down on Rivera Street is a false sense of history. Rivera Street was essentially City Walk in 1930. There was a woman who had an idea to come in and do all of these booths and create a charming Spanish atmosphere in Rivera Street and take the original adobe and, you know. Right. And nothing's changed since then. Now you have all these vendors in there who think that they want to continue to have this sales area and create a new history for LA in a way, saying that this is the birth of LA and that the Spanish was always here and there's always this going on. The Getty wants to come back in and develop this project, and they're saying, you know, it's kind of a vanity thing. Yeah, they're going to give something to the public, but they really just want to place this thing on Rivera Street. But they don't want to do what it takes to make this thing a real thing. There's no educational programming that's surrounding it right now. There's no linkage to the schools. There's no linkage to the Chicano community in terms of developing a support group for what can it mean, what is it, what kind of stories can we share, how do we develop nighttime programs. There are no nighttime programs developed. There's no staffing mechanism developed. There's no long-range funding in order to keep the place open after it opens. The staff at El Pueblo don't have a clue about how to do all that, nor do they care, because they're interacting with the Chicano community down there, or the Latino community, who's got them held hostage because they're selling all this stuff. We have downtown LA and Rivera Street that's in dire need of renovation, and this could be a footprint and something that sparks something that's larger. But there's no larger concept of how do you bring in the Disneys and everybody else to say, hey, this is a piece of true history. How does that connect with the theme park that's going to happen in Anaheim? What's the long range? How do you develop a project that has growth? How do you grow a project that has meaning and reality? It's not about building a building and saying, God, you know, we did such a nice thing for LA. You know, they may very well be doing this project because it's a counterpoint to the castle on the hill. You know, anybody says, well, what else are you doing in LA? And they can point to that. There's your playpen, go over there. You know, meanwhile, come up and genuflect when you get to the hill, you know. And and Disney's doing it. Disney's not helping the state of California develop a project and a museum project. You know, the state of California basically is getting a runaround with whether or not they're actually going to fund any of the parts of it. You know, they want to have part of the benefits out of it, but they don't really want to interact with it. So I think what's happening is that people are still creating projects, seeing projects in a very kind of, in a smaller, you know, they're seeing the physicality, they're seeing, I think, projects in life as an object, you know, and to me, you know, the object has a different meaning in no matter where you put it. If you took an African sculpture out of the village in Africa and set it in the middle of the Metropolitan Museum, what's the meaning between those two objects? You know, can we ever, you know, we have a Eurocentric point of view about we're going to go out and collect, and we're going to collect all these objects, and if we amass all these objects, we're going to understand the culture. So we're going to strip the objects away from the culture, come in, put them on a pedestal, take people through museums, do the little audio programs, do what I do, you know, and tell them about that experience. But we're not going to empower the culture, you know, at the point of that culture.
But that's the deeper paradox of the point, is that you've got the job of trying to reinvigorate objects that have been 20-30 context. So you have to go back and kind of...
Right, so if you're dealing with downtown LA, what's the context? What's the object? What's the larger environment that the object is going to sit in? And how do we create something that is Los Angeles? Not something that looks like Los Angeles, not an international food court.
But maybe that's what
you know.
it is. Maybe LA is just what looks like Los Angeles. Maybe Las Vegas is the truth about LA.
Well, it could very well be. It could very well be, but I think that there's a value to trying to go deeper with it and trying to think about how do you facilitate the greater good? You know, I'm more concerned with, you know, if I design something, I really want someone who comes in and interacts with that design to be a better person when they leave, to feel like I heard their voice. You know, and I'm not there yet. I mean, you know, I get depressed when I show my stuff, you know, because it's like, you know, the other half of it is you see where you're going to fall short all the time. You know, you're limited by all the physical constraints, the physical constraints, and you know all that, and your own level of interest. And you know, but I would really like to design an environment where I could kind of project or imagine somebody coming in 5 years and sitting down and feeling like they were empowered because the dialogue that was coming back with them was a shared point of view. You know, I wish we could design an environment where you could have, you know, multiple points of view around a given topic. Not because you want to get to the solution, but you want to get to all the questions. Because nothing ever gets solved. It's just all the questions keep coming up in each new era all the time. We still have problems with water, we still have problems with the land, we still have problems with pollution, you still have problems with the politicians, with your next door neighbor, with the immigrants, with teaching English, it never goes away. You know, all the issues in the iconography of the Siqueiros mural look like they came out of the paper. I could pick up any newspaper and everything that was painted in that mural is in the LA Times today. Nothing's been solved, you know. So as humans, I think the only thing that we're here to do, in a way, is to keep talking to each other and realize that you can't solve it all. You can't do it all, you can't solve it all, but you can certainly empower people to share their feelings and do the best they can with it and go to the higher level with it, you know, and create something that has a longer range effect and not a one-off, very quick, satisfying answer. You know, yeah, it could be either way. I don't care. I mean, I can do either, whatever you guys would want to do. Do you want to go down and? Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, good. Yeah.
I guess I'll just turn it. Yeah. Where's the pack? Yeah.